3.2 million years ago, the world moved to a slower, heavier rhythm. The land we now call Africa breathed with life, but it was a life ruled by uncertainty. Vast floodplains stretched beneath a burning sun, broken by winding rivers that cut through the earth like veins. These waters brought survival, but they also concealed death. Every step toward the riverbank was a gamble, and every reflection on the water's surface masked a hidden threat waiting just below. At this time, the African climate was unstable. Long, dry seasons alternated with violent rains that transformed quiet channels into roaring lifelines. Rivers swelled and receded, carving new paths and leaving behind oxbow lakes, marshes, and deep pools where ancient creatures thrived. The river was not merely a source of water. It was a living system, a shifting border between life and extinction. On the open savannas near these waterways lived early members of our own lineage. Homo habilis, small in stature but revolutionary in mind, moved cautiously through this dangerous world. Standing little more than 4 feet tall, with long arms and a slight frame, they were not built for dominance. Their survival depended not on strength, but on awareness, cooperation, and the earliest sparks of human intelligence. Homo habilis lived at the edge of capability. Their brains, larger than those of earlier Australopithecines, allowed them to shape stone tools with intention. Sharp flakes cut meat from bone. Rounded cores crushed plants and cracked marrow-rich remains. These tools were simple, but they represented a profound shift. For the first time, survival was guided not only by instinct, but by thought. Yet intelligence offered no protection from the river. The waterways of early Africa were not empty corridors of calm. Beneath the murky surface lived giants that ruled without challenge. Among the most formidable were the ancestors of modern giant catfish, creatures that could grow longer than a full-grown human and weigh hundreds of kilograms. Their bodies were thick and muscular, their heads broad and armored, their mouths capable of swallowing prey whole. These catfish were not passive bottom feeders. They were apex ambush predators. Sensitive barbels detected vibrations in the water. Lateral line systems read movement with precision. In moments, they could surge forward with explosive power, turning still water into chaos. Anything that entered the river became a potential meal. Fish, turtles, crocodiles, and even land animals were taken when opportunity allowed. Calves dragged under, antelope pulled from the shallows, and when early humans approached the water's edge, they too entered the domain of a predator older and more specialized than they could ever be. For Homo habilis, the river was unavoidable. Water meant life. It was needed for drinking, for cleaning food, for gathering plants and shellfish trapped along the banks. During dry seasons, rivers were magnets, drawing animals from miles away. Where prey gathered, predators followed. The river became a meeting ground of hunger and fear. Homo habilis approached in small groups, never alone. Their posture was alert. Heads turned constantly. Eyes scanned the water's surface for ripples that felt wrong, shadows that moved against the current. They learned patterns without understanding them scientifically. They sensed danger without naming it. But learning had limits. A single misstep could end everything. An individual leaning too far, reaching for water or washing blood from hands after feeding, could trigger a silent response below. The giant catfish did not announce its presence. There was no warning splash, no visible fin cutting the surface, only a sudden surge from below, a violent pull, and a body disappearing into dark water. Death came without sound. These encounters left no witnesses. The group would only know that one of them was gone. No remains floated back, no bones washed ashore. The river took its victims completely, erasing them from the land and from memory. Over generations, this loss shaped behavior. Homo habilis began to treat water with ritual caution. They drank quickly. They avoided deep banks. They chose higher ground where the river narrowed or flowed faster, making ambush more difficult. Knowledge passed silently, through imitation rather than language. At the same time, the giant catfish evolved in parallel. Flood cycles allowed them to move between river systems, expanding into lakes and temporary wetlands. Seasonal floods trapped them in shrinking pools, where they became even more aggressive hunters. Scarcity sharpened their predatory edge. These fish were perfectly adapted to this unstable world. Thick scales resisted injury. Powerful tails launched sudden attacks. Wide gill structures allowed survival in oxygen-poor waters where other predators failed. They were living fossils even then, refined by millions of years of selection. For Homo habilis, each survival reinforced the value of the mind. Tools became sharper. Group coordination improved. Watchers stood guard while others drank. Children were kept back. The river was no longer approached blindly. It was approached with memory. This was not dominance. It was negotiation. The relationship between early humans and river predators was not a battle with a clear winner. It was a continuous tension, shaped by environment rather than intention. Homo habilis did not conquer the river. They learned to coexist with its dangers, adapting behavior rather than challenging strength. Occasionally, floods exposed stranded fish in shallow pools. These moments offered rare opportunities. A trapped catfish could become food, but only if approached carefully. Stone tools slashed at thick flesh. Groups worked quickly, knowing water levels could rise again without warning. Even victory carried risk. Such encounters accelerated cognitive development. Planning, timing, and restraint became survival traits. The river rewarded patience and punished impulsivity. Those who lived longer. Those who did not vanished without trace. This struggle unfolded beneath a sky that cared nothing for either species. Seasons shifted, rivers changed course, entire habitats disappeared and reformed elsewhere. Both Homo habilis and giant catfish were products of this instability, shaped by the same forces, yet placed on opposite sides of survival. Over thousands of generations, Homo habilis would give way to new forms. Brains would grow larger, bodies would change, tools would become more complex. Control over fire and landscape would follow. But at 3.2 million years ago, none of that was guaranteed. The future of humanity hung on fragile decisions made at the edge of dangerous water. Every sip of water was a risk. Every visit to the river was a reminder that intelligence had limits. The deadliest predators were not always the ones that roared or charged across open land. Sometimes they waited in silence beneath a surface that looked calm and harmless. The story of Homo habilis and the giant catfish is not one of victory or defeat. It is a reminder of how close humanity came to disappearing before it truly began. Survival was not heroic. It was cautious. It was quiet. It was earned one safe moment at a time. 3.2 million years ago, The deadliest encounters did not always happen on land. Some unfolded beneath dark water, where the past swallowed the unwary and the future learned to fear the river.